Welcome back to the Smugglers Den. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes, and here we are with episode 50. Oh, I promise this amazing episode with tons of special guests, and I am here today to disappoint. Unless you love the special guest we do have this week, which is none other than James Stevenson. James, welcome back to the show. How you been?
Dude, I've been good. After that rules reference drop, I've been playing a lot more Destiny the last few weeks. The game is much more fun than it was, and I can't believe I get to be here on the 50th episode because I'm not one of your co-hosts that quit, and I'm not one of your co-hosts that moonlights on other podcasts.
Yeah, you know what? The amount of hosts that don't do other podcasts now is getting smaller and smaller by the second. Pretty sure someone snapped up Elrathian. Gem occasionally. I mean, who's left? It's just you, James. So where are you going? Just tell me where you're going now so I don't have to find out from someone else.
When it comes to Destiny, I'm exclusive to Tiny Grimes. And, if you ever want to watch my other show where I play video games, it's twitch.tv/Insomniac Games. We do it 3 times a week, but we'll be back in January after the new year. But when it comes to Destiny, I'm all yours, Tiny.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll take that. And I don't know why we haven't plugged that show before, so now we know. And as always, thank you so much to everyone on Patreon who's been supporting the show. I've been recording a lot of content lately. I've been recording sometimes like 3-4 games a day. So instead, I don't put them all on YouTube the first day because then I can't record for a few days. So what I do is drop them all on Patreon, and they have access to them a little bit earlier. But then don't worry, if you don't want to support on Patreon, not a problem. Most of the videos come out on a more mass scale. The ones that don't come out of the disasters, only the Patreon people get to watch the disasters. So that's all right. So James, I promised everyone oodles of guests. This next couple weeks, I have a lighter schedule where I'm more flexible, and I think I'm going to try to get all the guests then. So for now, it's just James, and what we're going to do today is talk about 3 things. R2P2, Rivals Drop, and Legacies. The show is starting now to already move towards Legacies. With the Rivals is dropping like what, today? Today people posted images. Am I correct on this one, James?
Yeah, there's like photos. People unbox them. Some store gave them out early, or maybe it was a store owner who just let them unbox it all and look at all the cards. So we've seen photos of all the neutral cards. Supposedly, there's still rumors that in Europe they're going to get Legacies on Friday, so we might start getting full set spoilers like within the next week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, within the next week, like within the next 2 days. What day is it?
Like literally, you may see a new Star Wars movie Thursday night and wake up in the next morning to have the entire Legacy set spoiled in photograph form.
Maybe during the movie on Friday, I'll just have my phone out checking Destiny spoilers, and people will be like, "Dude, put your phone away." I'll be like, "Hey, man, you don't understand. These are Destiny spoilers. You shut your face."
Dude, look at this new blue removal. Look at this card. Look at it. Who cares what happens on the screen?
I have a feeling I will not do that, just to be clear. No one has to come and tie me up, so I can't do that. I'm not doing that. All right, but let's start here. I've become somewhat famous as the R2P2 naysayer. I've had people misquoting me so far as to have me saying that I said it was a bad deck that only beats bad players. To be very clear, I never said that. What I have said many times on the show is that when it first won, I said, looking at it, it doesn't look amazing. It looks solid, but I can see how this would definitely win as a surprise deck, that people aren't ready for that much healing. And since then, it's continued to be even better. And I've said since then, I still am not sure it's the best build of this deck. I'm still wondering if maybe a Kanan version is better. And that my own personal data has shown it to be inconsistent. Yes, there are games where you get the early caution and the early pose weapon and just crush face. But there's other games where the caution comes after a guy's dead and you get bursted down and now you only have one guy, and it just seems like with one guy with 2 dice that only have 2 damage sides on them, one being a 1, it feels to me like it's not as consistent as everyone else thinks it is. That's been my stance so far. It has continued to win and just pile up wins, making me look stupider and stupider, which is fair. James, tell me, how dumb am I? Is R2P2 the clear runaway best deck in the meta?
Yes, though I think people are. I think it's just what takes advantage. So there may still be something better, and I think there may be answers, but it certainly takes advantage of the rules changes because basically cards like Force Illusion and Caution just became way, way, way better than they were, and kind of it piles in. I think I remember playing the two-player set, and we knew that Kylo and Phasma were super overpowered, just playing a straight game out of the two-player set. But it was weird because this like Poe Raid deck came with it. And it's like, well, how can this deck hang with it if Phasma and Kylo are so overpowered? Like I didn't. It was
Yeah.
kind of like I didn't really understand it. It doesn't look like it should be able to hang with it, but it does in practice. And so that was kind of the first hint that hey, maybe there's actually some pretty good synergy here, and these cards work together. And then you start adding stuff like Light Bows and Poe's Blaster, and that synergizes really well with Poe. And then suddenly you make all of the shield cards better, all of the healing cards better. Force Illusion is ungodly against range decks now, and it can't be blocked. You can't get around it with a vibro knife. So all of a sudden, it kind of has all these tools, and like you said, you're like, well, one of your characters is going to die, and you're going to be left with one character. But it's amazing how survivable one character is in that deck. I played a game last night where I had Rey, and she was against a fully loaded Bala with 3 weapons, who had gotten a reactivation, and a fully loaded Sienna with 3 weapons. And not only did I survive, I got him down to 1 health, and I think it gone either way based on a couple little plays. But it was that moment of like, I actually killed his Bala and saw him redeploy all 3 weapons and discard the 3 weapons Sienna had. So like, and I've never seen that happen in a game before. But that's literally, it was like I was literally taking 9 dice, and I was like, between guard and force misdirection and some of the blowout removal, and then like using force illusion to take 4 or 5 damage. Like I was just able to continually stay alive. And then, Rey, when she has a light bow and her lightsaber and a Shoto, getting an extra shield every turn, doing an automatic damage, doing like 3-4 damage, it just piles up, and like it's kind of just unassuming, but it's a very steady, slow deck that manages to heal itself while consistently doing damage. And after 6 rounds, you're like, well, I did 35 damage to you, but you still have 5 left, and you've done like 40 to me, and the game's over.
Yeah, and I do agree with all of that. And I've had those games where I'm just like, wow, I see it. I see how good this deck is. But I have had games where I've seen the downside of it more. And I think what's happening in like my own head is there's a lot of comparison going on to things like the really broken decks that we've had, the Poe Mazes, the Rainbow Nines kind of stuff that like when it has a bad game, it still wrecks your face. You're like, oh, I had a bad game. Instead of thermals, I got U-Wings. Oh, man, what a terrible world I live in. And when it seems like Poe Rey doesn't have a good game, it seems way more vulnerable to me than the other decks we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a bad draw, but even then, like, I'll tell you, this game I just played, the same game I was talking about, my opening hand was 2 light bows, a Shoto, maybe it binds an ancient or something like that, and he got a first turn salvage stand down. Like it was his first action with salvage stand, and I was like, well, this is unfortunate. Or maybe it was Poe's Blaster and a Shoto or something like that. But it was just kind of like, it was one of those games where it was like, oh man, like this is not the hand I want. I don't have any mitigation. I don't, I need to play something right away. I don't have the time to play it binds and hope. I need to get a weapon out in case he rolls a disrupt. But I threw both of my light bows away because I just wasn't going to be able to play them right off the bat. And I was like, they're not going to be able to redeploy. Wherever it goes to is going to get killed. And I was like, I don't think it's worth it. And I still managed to come back from that. So I think, again, with that resiliency, if you can, sometimes if you can't get the weapons you want, as long as you can heal and stay alive and keep pinging that 1 damage from Rey, like you can fight your way back into games. And I think that's why it's so good, is because healing's so good. And I think people have like undervalued unblockable damage for a long time. Like, I mean, the Vibro Knife did it, but overall, because Vibro Knife was so prevalent, people weren't using shields, so unblockable wasn't really that great. There weren't that many shields. So I'm kind of wondering if there's a deck out there, and especially with some of the new cards coming, that maybe you start to see people starting to value unblockable a little higher, because you might be able to actually punch through and kill stuff. Because that was really useful in like Awakenings when that starter deck lightsaber could do the 2 unblockable damage, and that would win you a game sometimes. Someone would
Yep.
dug in a character and you could, overwrite that lightsaber and, use the throne room or whatever the case may be. So I think maybe there's that we've undervalued unblockable due to shields being kind of worthless for a while, and now we may start to see unblockable sniper rifles and that sort of stuff come back.
And we have events that let all your damage become unblockable. We've got backup muscle. So there's a real legit backup muscle unblockable damage deck out there that won't take a ton of retooling of a normal deck even.
Yeah, I mean, I think with stuff like Deadly too, and you think about the cards like Yellow Villain has some interesting tools that could be interesting. They're getting there's a new yellow sniper rifle in Rivals that we just saw today that has an unblockable damage side. So there's some interesting tools, and I think with another set of cards, there's that Vibro. I don't know if it's a Vibro Axe or Vibro Cutter that removes all the shields when it does damage.
Yeah, I think that card's good.
Yeah, I think that could be really,
We've been
really
talking about that
interesting.
card for weeks. No one's using it still. They're like, Tiny doesn't know anything.
I actually, so when we get to the Rivals decks, I have a deck that uses that, and I think has a fun use for it.
Nice. I do want to revisit real quick that game you were talking about. I feel like that was the game where maybe you did win it, but you were certainly vulnerable, right? Like if your opponent had just had a good start and rolled well and put 8 damage into
here's
that
the
character, then you're in trouble.
So, you know what? He did roll well.
Oh.
If he hadn't rolled well that game, I win that game easily.
Okay.
He was rolling, and like at the end, he won the game when he re-rolled. He had his first roll, he got two sides, and then on his first re-roll, he got another two sides and had 8 damage showing, and I couldn't mitigate it out. He literally killed me by, I did my ancient and I had 8 health, so he got me by, I was 1 health shy, and I think if I played it slightly differently, I might have been able to get a shield and hold off.
Okay.
But that's literally how close it was, even with him rolling. Like Vika was like, "I'm rolling super hot," and he's like, "If I hadn't rolled hot, there's no way."
Yeah.
So I think for the amount of dice I was facing, like I was like, "There's no way I should have a chance in this game." When you have 6 upgrades out and 2 characters, and you've gotten a full extra Bala turn with 3 upgrades on Bala, like how. Again, it doesn't compute. I don't feel like I'm mitigating that much damage with the deck, but when you actually go back and start looking at all the dice you take away with guard and with force misdirection and all the damage you take away with force illusion, you take away a ton of damage with Po Ray.
Yeah, I had 2 games last night. I played against Mike the Rebel Spy. He played 5 Dice Villain. I played Po Ray. The first game, it was not close. He killed a guy, but I think it was like Poe against his team. Poe had ended the game with like 4 damage on him, so it was fine. And then the second game, he didn't kill either guy. But the crazy part was he drew well and rolled hot the whole game. Like he got a logistics immediately. Turn 1, he had 2 upgrades down. Turn 2, he put 2 more down. So he was 9 dice villain, rolling all damage sides, and I destroyed him. I was like,
Yep.
After the game, we're both like, what just happened? Like, you are not a bad player. How did I destroy 9 dice villain rolling hot? I do not understand what happened. We needed to have recorded that game.
Yep, that was exactly the same way that game that I played felt last night. It's bizarre. It doesn't seem right when you look back on it. How do you survive? But that deck is super survivable. I do think, I think the kind of interesting competitor deck, we played a game a couple nights ago where it was against Kylo 2 and Baby Vader. And I think that deck, has enough burst potential, has that consistent, there's a lot of blue in R2P2. So it's not as consistent as it would be against some decks, but Kylo can hit relatively reliably. A lot of good black damage sides. But I think like cards like No Mercy sometimes that's a card that's gotten forgotten a little bit too. But man, when you're just 6 away from Rey or Poe, and a lot of times, a No Mercy will let you kill them right then, right there. But you don't have 6 in that moment. You do 2, and then they do, they play a Force Illusion, and they play a Caution, and then they play a Field Medic, and you went from being 6 away to suddenly they now have, effectively 10 or 11 health again, and now they get another 2 or 3 turns. Whereas No Mercy was that card where we put characters away in Awakenings and even SOR before they could get it dug in, before they could do something that would bring them back into the game. And I think that card, it was proven in the Galactic qualifiers, and we've seen it working well in that deck, that No Mercy has a lot of potential to be a card that can disrupt a deck because it gives you that sudden burst out of nowhere that lets you finish off a character like Ray or Poe when you've done some initial damage.
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the things that's making this deck so good is that we haven't fully adjusted to this meta, right? Like we haven't worked on unblockable damage decks. We haven't focused on No Mercy and finding burst in different ways. We've just been comfortably like, okay, this is the new meta. The new meta is decks are slower, and R2P2 does a really good job of being the grindiest of the grinder decks. And so I think the way to beat it is not to build other grinder decks, but to find different ways for burst. Yes, they're not going to be as amazing as some of the burst decks we had in the past, but we could still make burst decks. They're just going to be slightly less efficient.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine if R2P2 had second chance.
No thanks, sir. No thank you. Oh my goodness, that would be busted. Okay, well, let's move on from our R2P2 discussion. I'm going to wrap it up like this. R2P2 is good. Let's be clear. I am not saying it is not good. In fact, it may be the best deck in the meta right now. I think it is definitely the best of the grindy-ish decks that we have all been lured into playing. Having said that, though, I don't feel like it's as oppressive of a best deck as any of the best decks we've seen in quite a long time. I feel like it's quite beatable. You do have to be smart about it, right? Like you can't just roll a grindy deck into an even better grindier deck. I think you need to try a different alternative, a different approach. But even so, I think it's beatable. But it is a good deck, especially in the hands of a good player. I like that it is a deck that scales up with the better a player is, the more reps a player has with it. So that's my final take on the deck. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm glad that if we're going to have a best deck, and there always will be a best deck, right? At least it's one that, wants to win over like 5 or 6 turns and offers like a 20, 25, 30-minute game where there's a lot of interaction and a lot of interesting different plays, like how you play it. It's not Pomaz, it's not Sabine Ezra. It's a thoughtful deck that rewards you playing it, gives you interesting outs and interesting opportunities with how you use Poe's special and other things like that. So I think maybe it's maybe the Vibro Knife nerf went a little too far. Maybe there needs to be a little more shield hate, but at the same token, it feels a lot more like the Destiny that I want to play than say Rainbow Nines or Pomaz did.
Yeah. The other thing, you could just play Vibro Knife. Like that's not an impossible option. You've got quite a bit of melee weapons. You can link it up with other melee weapons and do more damage. Like that's still a reasonable possibility.
Yeah, I think it's a little hard to get the damage through because there's just not enough modified sides. You gotta the modified blue sides are the real trick, right? Like yeah. Most characters don't have modified blue, so that's kind of the problem. But if you start building around, you think like Electra Staff. I've seen some. I don't think it's tier 1, but there's like a Kylo 2 Grievous deck that lives on Electra Staff, and you could combine Vibro Knife with that, and that can do some serious unblockable damage real quick, and also can steal weapons, which is kind of cool too. There's some interesting options out there if you wanted to play and try and counter that deck that I think people haven't. I say people haven't. We just haven't seen it yet in regionals. I'm confident there's people behind the scenes cooking this kind of stuff and trying to figure out how to beat it. But on the other hand, with new cards entering the pool, we may never find out if there was a true counter to it because we're going to get a whole influx of new stuff.
That's certainly been my approach. I haven't bothered to try to like brew the new great deck, whereas in most metas I'm trying to be at the cutting edge of deck brewing. I haven't had a lot of time this meta, and I knew this meta was an irrelevant meta for me personally, so it just wasn't worth it. So I think that is part of the issue. I think people just aren't going as all out as a community. We're just sort of using this as a springboard to Legacies, and to be frank, just having fun with a more diverse meta rather than really working hard on busting it wide open.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing, for me. It's like there's no tournaments worth playing for. I'm not no galactic qualifiers, no regionals until Legacies. So it's kind
Yep.
of like trying to learn the card pool, the Empire cards, play some interesting stuff, looking ahead and thinking about how that's all going to interact. But
Yep.
it's not there's not enough big tournaments during this meta to make it worthwhile.
All right. Well, speaking of turning ahead, let's turn ahead. Rivals is coming out or is out. So James and I both made some Rivals decks. James, I'm just going to put this deck out there first and assume this was not your deck. We didn't
Okay.
talk about this. I hope I don't spoil your deck. But an obvious good deck that everyone has noted is Elite Anakin plus Elite New Kylo. That deck is great. So let's just say that. That was not your deck, right?
That is not
Okay,
my
good.
deck.
We should have really planned that one out. All right. So I'm going to turn to a deck that I think is a cool deck. I played it once today. I lost a close game. It was interesting. And the deck is Elite Anakin, Seventh Sister, Jawa. So you get a 5 dice start. You get 3 characters. You get 26 damage. And so basically the point of this deck is just roll out a ton of dice. It's got binds all things. It has ancient lightsaber, crafted lightsaber, regular lightsaber, Shoto lightsaber, seeker droids. It's just like throw piles of upgrades down, roll, do piles of damage.
I like it. I love the Seven Sister. I think she's underused. I think those droids add up a lot. What do you stick on the Jawa? Or like, how do you use the Jawa in that deck? That's my first thought because I thought about some Jawa decks, but I'm like, I don't really want to put anything on him. I guess maybe a redeploy. He's kind of in that weird no man's land. He's gonna die so fast.
Yeah, so I ended the game with a Jawa with a crafted lightsaber on him, an ancient lightsaber, and a Shoto lightsaber. That was my end game. Which sounds awesome, but the problem is ancient lightsaber with a dude who only has 6 means if they god roll, you can't heal. They just kill all of your health. So that's what happened. We got to a scenario where, I roll in, he's able to take the shields off. He just re-rolls and has 6 showing. I have an ancient lightsaber in hand and on the Jawa. I can heal 4, but he just rolls 6. I have no mitigation, kills Jawa, and I'm like, oh, that's rather unfortunate, actually.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge for me. When I was thinking about the Jawa, it's like, well, what do you put on him? And it's like a bummer that you can't heal that Jawa very well. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
and are you gonna start putting like plastoid armor in your deck to make your Jawa 7? Maybe. I mean, if he's got
Definitely.
lightsabers, what's some stormtrooper armor?
Yeah, I don't know. He's only in there because he's 6, right? Like that's the
Right.
point. I only had room for 6 more, so he's in there. But yeah, he's weak.
Yeah.
He's weak at 6 health, but it's another body. It's another 6 health.
So I know we're only talking rivals right now, but that's interesting because when Legacies comes out, you could put a battle droid
Yeah.
in that
I
in
would
that
have
slot.
definitely rather battle droid because then you get a whole nother color as well. This is basically a mono blue deck.
Right, and then you get red, so that helps against Kylo 2 yourself.
Yep.
That +2 indirect side probably isn't very good in the deck, but otherwise he has 3 damage sides, so at least he's consistently, he's probably putting out 1 damage a turn, which is maybe a little more useful than the Jawa die sides are.
Yep. So it was an interesting deck. I enjoyed it a lot. It ended up being Phasma against a Jawa, and the Phasma rolled better than Jawa with his lightsabers. That's really was the long and short of it. And also, the deck had a little bit of a problem where it doesn't have quite enough villain cards yet to discard for Anakin, so that's kind of an issue. I started the game rolling double Anakin specials. He didn't mitigate them. I had no villain cards in hand,
Oh
so
no.
that would have been a very different start. So I think my version of the deck has a lot of work to do before it gets to be anywhere near ideal. But I think that character set and a bunch of weapons with binds is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I always love binds, and it feels like villain has never used it to its fullest potential because it's always been like Holocron. Holocron's probably more blowouty, more
Yeah.
satisfying than binds, but that slow ramp deck, especially with all the weapons we have now, is really really cool.
Yeah. Being able to just Yeah, by the end of the game, I had 2 binds, like mid game. No, actually, turn 2, I had 2 binds, and so it was just like every turn was a free upgrade. It was amazing. It was a
Yeah,
great feeling.
it feels really good when you get those in the first 6 or 7 cards, and really bad when they're in the last 5 cards of your deck.
Yeah, well then they're just rerolls, James. They're just
Yeah,
rerolls.
they're just rerolls.
But you didn't have any economy. All right, James. What is the deck that you're looking to play with rivals?
So I was looking, there's obviously uh, the combo with Anakin, and I have one of those too. But
Yeah, everyone does, right?
I'm gonna go away from Anakin for a second and focus on Ketsu Onyo.
Okay.
So Ketsu Onyo, if you maybe people have paid zero attention, but bounty hunter card, 11/14, 9 health, has a gun sight, two range, 2 melee, disrupt, discard, and shield. But the interesting part is before a character is defeated, you can move a weapon from them. So basically, it lets you redeploy a weapon that doesn't have redeploy. So I was kind of thinking about this, like, okay, how do you make the most of this? And it's a character who your opponent's going to want to kill first, and with weapons that don't redeploy that you would be much more useful if they were. So I was thinking it might be fun to try to do a Django Ketsu deck. Okay. So you can go all yellow. Mm-hmm. You can bring stuff like that. When the BD Cutter Vibro Axe that's in Empire at War, great against shields. Not a great weapon because it's 3 cost, doesn't redeploy, but now it does redeploy.
Yeah. Sure.
So if we put that on Django, we can use stuff like Deadly for unblockable damage as well. Fast Hands works on both of our characters, so Ketsu can end up with some fast hands later on. A couple other interesting options for redeploy that don't have them. The Mortar Gun might be a good one in a large group setting, or the Night Sniper is another gun that is cool. Lots of people like it, but normally doesn't redeploy. Now you can put it on Django safely. They kill Django, it goes to Ketsu. I think you combine that with stuff like Backup Muscle, but also Fight Dirty could be really good because you have a bunch of yellow weapons. Yeah. Some of these good yellow weapons that don't redeploy, like the Night Sniper, you could very easily quickly do, an extra 2, 3, 4 damage that you weren't able to before. And so I think it may have that little bursty potential, the unmitigatable factor from Django, and then being able to save those that big weapon, that big 3-cost weapon onto Ketsu and keep it rolling, might give you enough to kind of surprise some of these other decks out there.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't think it's going to be a great deck, to be honest, just because it's only 19 health. And it doesn't feel quite bursty enough, but I love the idea of suddenly these big fat weapons have redeploy. I think that's really strong. I think that's what's going to make Ketsu interesting. I just feel like Ketsu at 14 is so expensive. I wonder if the way to go with her is like 11.
Maybe you take her down to single die, and then you bring someone else in at 19 that can really be the big hitter, but then save one of the big weapons or big upgrades. Yeah,
I'm wondering if the way to go is like an 11 and an 8 instead, and go like Elite Bala and just load Bala up, knowing that one of the redeploys will go over anyway, and then the other one will go over also. But I don't know. I don't know if that just might be straight worse than 5 dice villain anyway. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think she's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just like that. There's, like you've said many times now. Okay, we have weapon. Does it have redeploy? No, not playable.
It's so sad. Makes me so sad.
Right. So I'm like, okay, well, this at least gives us some weapons that maybe aren't playable. Maybe there's a weapon out there that we can use. Because the only way we were using non-redeploy weapons was in Rainbow Nines, and now that Nines is gone, there's got to be some of these weapons that are really useful. And especially, it was all about the Cutter Vibro Axe. I'm like, well, that's just superb against shield. So if we could figure out a way to bring this weapon back, and so I was like, okay, how do we get the Vibro Axe and how do we get Ketsu in a deck? And that was sort of the approach when looking at these neutral rivals characters and how they might best be used.
What about Grievous and single die Ketsu? That's probably just bad, but it's like the same idea you had. You load up Grievous, only now you're like stealing weapons that then go over to Ketsu. I don't know. Interesting.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. That idea seems fun too. You also get some interesting red mitigation there. I guess not field medic, but you could do stuff like dug in, which might be useful.
Yeah, I don't know. Bottom line is we've got a lot of interesting possibilities with her. I think what's so sad about her is Anakin is less and better. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't think we're gonna see her much in constructed because Anakin is so good.
Yeah, I
Which
mean,
makes
she's
me a
gonna
little
be great.
sad.
She'll be great for draft because
Oh
you
yeah,
have, but you have weapons you have to use. That's the thing. You look
yeah,
at the if you go, you can find if you look on Knights of Ren Discord or whatever, you can find the whole Rivals pack, all the cards laid out. There's a lot of cards that are immediate, like, well, this will never see play in constructed,
yeah,
but there are a lot of cards that are like that actually be pretty useful in a draft limited setting,
yeah.
and they're not as efficient, and that's what's going to be so much fun. I can't wait for limited and draft play because I think non-efficient Destiny is some of the most fun Destiny. So
Yes,
it'll be a lot
for
of
sure.
fun.
Way to steal my line.
Yeah,
I should have trademarked that one.
you should have.
All right, let's move on to some Legacies decks, then, unless you have another Rivals deck you want to go over.
Well, just I won't go super in depth, but I do think I do want to try Anakin. I mean, Anakin's the best card, hero card. Obviously, every
Yes.
every draft deck is going to be playing with Anakin. It's ridiculous. But everyone says, well, villain Anakin's better. But I am really curious to see how villain or hero Anakin goes with Qui-Gon.
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially what you have is both characters have 2 damage sides and 2 shield sides.
Yeah.
And so I think that is pretty synergistic when all you're rolling is damage, shields, and resources. And so you combine that with you combine that with some of the other lightsabers and things, and I think that deck may have some. Like I said, I don't know if it's tier 1, but it should be a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and so that's
Oh,
kind
that'll
of
be
one of
good.
those combos. Yeah, that's a combo I definitely want to play with.
It certainly
And,
makes Riposte even better. Like you give up your shields and then just immediately get piles more.
yep, just all the time. Like that 3 damage is coming at some point because they're gonna hit you with riposte,
Yeah, I
like on
think
turn 1,
in
2.
that deck I might even be tempted to run 2 Return of the Jedi's to Riposte 4 times. Like it might just be worth it.
Ooh, I like that. Return of the Jedi is a card we haven't seen much of these days.
We're gonna see that. That card is like the most broken card that no one has ever played, right? Like that, and I'm not. What I mean by that is I'm not claiming it's been broken. It's going to be broken though. Like we're gonna hit a moment, and the design team has totally forgotten about the card, and then there's gonna be a card, and they're like, "Oh dang, Return of the Jedi is busted now. There's no way we should have allowed that card to be played 4 times."
Oh yeah, I mean they haven't made anything that bad, but I don't know. Hopefully they're play testing well enough now that they catch it, but we'll see, I guess.
All right, let's move on to Legacies. I'm going to start with the deck that I actually made a video about already, so I won't go very far in depth in it. If you want to hear more about it, go check it out. But I made a Tarkin deck. I think Tarkin is broken. Like, I'm just going to say it now. I think that card is broken. I think we're going to find some builds with it that are just crazy. And I don't know if this is it. But Tarkin, Elite, New Kylo. And the theory is this. Tarkin's busted. So let's give him a partner that you just have to kill. You have to kill the new Kylo. You can't just kill Tarkin. That's suicidal. And so then you're able to just load up Tarkin with stuff like Force Speed. No, not Force Speed, sorry. Holocron, Dark Council, Datapad. Jump the Holocrons into Force Power so that when you do finally kill Kylo, you're rolling maybe a Mind Probe, a Holocron, and a Dark Council. You're probably getting the 4 indirect damage plus a Mind Probe hit and just doing obscene amounts of damage with this character that looks like he wouldn't do damage.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that deck. I love that Tarkin is going to be really good. I want to see. I like weird. I like the weird kind of different way of dealing damage to you. Kind of, Palpatine has it. Thrawn doesn't really deal any damage. He's kind of what I wish Thrawn was in some ways, where like Thrawn had a way to like end the game while doing something kind of unique. So I'm really, really excited just to play with him. I'm excited to see how indirect damage works. Like 4 indirect damage is a lot. How do you allocate that? Like what do? Do you pile it on one character? Do you flip it between 2? And then like you're sitting there potentially with Kylo 2 dealing, especially if you're a mono deck, well, you're taking 2 there and 4 indirect. So that's without hardly anything happening, you're taking 6 damage a turn. The timer is on. You better get moving.
This kind of feels like a Palpatine type deck, only not all in on one character.
Yeah, it has that. I mean, the 4, right? It's like if you resolve 2 Palpatine die, you get 4 indirect damage. It gives you the power, Palpatine's ability without getting his dice, basically.
Yeah. Palpatine's ability on a 13 cost dude seems insane to me.
Well, and I think the interesting thing too is like you have with blue, you then have cards like manipulate, and it just says symbol. Blank is a symbol. So if you remove two
Yeah.
blank dice, so like there's cards that let you like, essentially turn your dice to a bad side that then Tarkin can harvest.
Yeah, I've got
Uh,
two manipulates in there. Turn one of your side to a blank, make their a blank. You get to remove their die essentially and make your die the side you wanted.
I mean, like or you could even play a card like anger, like hit them with their own die, and then turn around and remove the two blanks to do 4 more damage.
Mm-hmm. I do
Oh,
have anger in here, by the way.
it's dirty. I
Yeah.
love it. The dirtiness of it is just
Yeah.
like it. Like I love that you can harvest. It's the same way Unkar would harvest bad dice or
Yep.
harvest dice you least needed. Tarkin may be able to harvest the dice you least need, and you may be able to just create that. And who's going to mitigate a blank die?
Oh yeah, and you might have to.
Right.
The meta might get to a spot where you're just like, well, got to remove that Tarkin blank. You know what card's gonna get real good is Feel Your Anger. That's gonna
Oh
be
yeah.
a serious meta call.
Yep. If you're playing blue villain with this deck, you're like, okay, I'm not going to play my angers and stuff until I
Yeah.
know what's in their deck.
Yeah, maybe not. But yeah, so my version of this is probably way too cute. The one I published or that I made a video about has 2 manipulates, 2 angers, a leadership, a copy of Power of the Dark Side. I think it's probably too cute, but there's going to be some version of this deck that is at least decent.
Yeah, and I think, given that we haven't seen all of, we've hardly seen any of the events and stuff that are in Legacies, there's a chance there could be, given how Darkseid has this kind of like turn dice to blank thing, there could be even more stuff that could, fuel this type of deck. There could be more cards that fuel indirect damage. So you have to think that, the version you have now may seem too cute, but it may have, another 6 or 8 ammo cards that are coming for it that's going to make it even better. So definitely has a lot of upswing potential.
Yeah, so I'm excited about it. What do you got for us?
Okay, so I've been playing one of the first decks when kind of the errata came down. I played a bunch of was E Kanan with a Jedi instructor and a Padawan, and it was like blue ramp using Reaping the Crystal. It binds all things, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't know, we'll see, but I want to try it with Yoda instead of Kanan, and I maybe even want to try it with 2 Padawans instead of the instructor. Here's my thought. You've got Yoda, who's like the ultimate support character. You have Padawans, who essentially give you 2 free resources for weapons. With all the new lightsabers, stuff like the heirloom lightsaber, for instance, which has redeploy if it's on a blue character and has terrific sides. Between that and like Reaping the Crystal, I think it's in theory possible to get out like 2 weapons, maybe even one of those being a 3 cost on the first turn. So if you can start your game with, 2 Yoda dice, 2 Padawan dice, something like, a light bow or an heirloom lightsaber and an ancient lightsaber, now we're cooking with gas right off the bat. And so it's, you have 6 dice, a lot of good synergy. The Padawan has a great die. Yoda's going to let you kind of do whatever you want, granting a lot of shields and a lot of focus. And it's going to make those Padawans big targets. Because if they go after Yoda, the Padawans are loaded up with weapons, and if they kill the Padawan, stuff redeploys to Yoda, and so you could get to this end game state of Yoda rolling in with 3 weapons and doing a lot of damage. I think it might need Funeral Pyre, depending on I haven't like kind of figured out the exact balance of what the weapons would be. The other card that might be interesting in the deck too, and maybe I don't know if it works great, but Coordination. Given the special ability with Yoda to turn a die, it gives all of your characters 1 shield. So if you got that out early, I'm not sure you want to do that because you want to be playing weapons. But the idea of, oh, well, I get a shield plus 3 more shields, and essentially I could get 4 shields out of that kind of seems like it might be interesting. It's a little expensive at 2 cost to get out, but it felt like in a kind of spread blue hero deck, it could be really good.
What does Coordination do again?
Coordination is a 2 cost force ability that's in Empire at War, and the sides of the dice are there's 2 1 focus sides, a 1 resource, and then 2 specials and a blank. The special is give each character 1 shield. So you could, in theory, like if you got that early, you could be every single turn giving all 3 characters a shield. Might work in that sort of spread deck environment, but even with stuff like Caution, you can pull a Padawan die, you can pull a blank Yoda die, and I guess Yoda doesn't even have a blank, but you can, which is even better. Like, can you imagine getting the end of a game with Yoda loaded up? Yoda has no blanks.
Yep.
Yoda can turn his dice to whatever he wants. He can gain shields, gain resources. He has a 2 focus side. He's just Yoda can, like, if you get down to the end of the game with the 2 dice Yoda with 3 weapons on him, it feels like he will be one of the better finishers that you could have out there, even though he doesn't have any of his own damage sides, just because he has so much focus and so much ability to shield and focus himself.
Yeah, I don't know what I think of that deck. That deck feels like a deck where if a Padawan dies turn one, you're kind of like, oh, uh-oh. But maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be enough. It certainly sounds promising. I look forward to seeing it. Let's see. Let's see what my next deck is here. I lost my page here. Here we go. Okay, let's see. What do we want to go with? The crazy deck. Let's look at this one. It's an Anakin deck. It's Elite Anakin, Elite Greedo, Battle Droid.
Oh yeah.
And so this is again kind of that thing that I was talking about before, where you really have to go sort of all in on Anakin to kill him. That leaves Greedo hanging around at the end, being a Weisenheimer, just killing you. But it lets you do all kinds of interesting stuff like Free for All, which I think is going to be a really strong villain card. If you haven't seen this yet, it's remove any number of your dice, then deal indirect damage to an opponent equal to the number of dice you just removed. That's only cost 1. Arm to the Teeth might be good in this deck, as you can put a bunch of like 1 cost, 0 cost stuff down on Greedo, and then just be able to arm to the teeth. I don't know. It feels like there's something there. It feels like it's probably not going to be great, but it's just one of the decks I came up with that. There's so many 5 dice options now that it's kind of it's rather appealing.
Yeah, I mean, Greedo, while we're walking into, between Greedo and the Battle Droid, you're really walking in to feel your anger, since they both have 2 blanks. But
Yeah.
in Greedo, having 3 black damage sides is pretty solid. And
Yeah.
so if you can have 2 of those, chances are he's going to be dealing, 3 or 4 damage a turn. But if they're too focused on Anakin, and you kill him, and then you get down to a Battle Droid who ends up with stuff left over. Again, I think the Battle Droid's in that tough position of kind of hard to stay alive, potentially, in an endgame scenario. But
Yep.
Greedo is too. And Greedo getting that last shot off, you think that last shot is probably generally going to be worth about 2 damage when he dies for free. So, and sometimes you might get lucky and do 4. It's got some power. I do love the free for all with that, because again, if you do go with all the cheap dice, you could do some really fun things, and then arm to the teeth. A card like On the Hunt might have some particular utility again with all the shields. It's a cheap die you can throw down. You can free for all it. You can fight dirty it, and you can also there's some interesting plays.
Holocron, just Holocron, no force powers. Not bad in this deck.
Oh yeah, because like resource and focus are great, and
Yeah.
they might try. And if you catch them off guard, they might just try and mitigate it right off the
course.
bat, because they
Yeah.
think, and you're like, it's like, oh, that's just a free for all die
Yep.
that I'm hoping hits a focus or a resource for me.
And you can stick it on Greedo early, along with a hunker down and something else for all zeros, arm to the teeth, and boop, there's 3.
Yeah, I do like it. I like kind of the, hey, you got to kill Anakin, and I'm going to discard cards and do damage with Anakin right off the bat, but I'm also going to set up, I'm just going to play every single card. It's kind of that Cheerios, play as many cards as you can and just turn them all into damage.
Yep.
That's fun. That sounds I
feel like that's not a tier 1 deck, but it's an interesting starting spot.
Yeah, I think it starts at that tier 2, like people not knowing how to handle it, because right off the bat you're just gonna get people like, what are you doing? I don't understand. This isn't Destiny as I think of it. So
yeah. All right, what's your next deck?
So the other deck, I like going back to your Seven Sister love that we were talking about before. I really want to play Seven Sister with Maul.
Okay. Yep.
I think they both are elite. You get a solid, it's only 21 health, but I think like the combination of Maul not being, you take his die, he automatically mitigates. Being able to go for the Seeker Droid, Maul's lightsaber being just incredibly good, and also being a weapon that does sync really well with the Vibro Knife in this meta of shields. So, and I think the other interesting part is just having that kind of option. You can go Secret Droids on the Seventh Sister, and she becomes a really big threat. Maul in the end game seems very, very dangerous. to try and deal with, because if you mitigate his die, he's going to mitigate yours and get free mitigation out of it.
Yeah.
But if you kill Maul and you let the sister get a couple secret droids, there's a lot of problems there. I think Kylo Ren's Starfighter is a scary card.
Yep.
As we've seen how good guessing color is with Kylo 2. It lets you play, I think, most blue villain decks. That's going to be like one of the big chase legendaries, because any blue villain deck is going to be playing Kylo Ren Starfighter. It essentially has 4 damage sides if you can guess well. And a shield is worthwhile too. A shield is negative damage, so like it has 5 great sides. It only costs 2. It could potentially do a ton of damage. It's going to scare people off of playing big number cards. And then you just get all the great, villain stuff between Rise Again, Lightsaber Throw, Intimidate, which is, a very, very valuable 2 or 3 damage card currently in the meta. So I kind of think, and I did have Feel Your Anger in there because I do think blanks could be big again. So that is a deck that I think is exciting. Also, I think you need Force Illusion, at least until further notice. Like, if you play blue, Force Illusion is one of the best cards in the game. So you almost want to just splash blue in any deck to get access to a couple Force Illusions, because you're going to get 8, probably 8 extra health out of Force Illusion, somewhere between 6 and 8 health. And that is literally like another character just by having blue in your deck and having 2 copies of Force Illusion.
2 Force Illusions, 2 Ancient Lightsabers. Good luck killing me.
Yep.
And that's what we said, by the way, when they were spoiled. When Ancient Lightsaber was spoiled, we were all kind of like, oh no, this might be too much. And it has proven in some ways to be too much. All right, the last deck I want to talk about is kind of a crazy deck I made. Elite Aura Sing, 1-die Dr. Aphra. Now, this deck is based on several different combination pieces. You get fast hands and quick draw holster with Aura Sing. And then in addition to that, because of Aphra, you're getting cheap droids out, which are supports, which lets you play partnership. So you have several different ways to be able to just roll Aura out and then resolve hopefully a 3, because you hit the 2, you discard 1. And, hopefully do other damage as well with weapons that you're getting to re-roll with a quick draw holster. So it's like, do tons of damage that way really fast. And then you can do things like free for all and fight dirty and arm to the teeth, because you've got all these little droids rolling around. And you can just be like, boosh, here's so much burst. Good luck with it. The problem with the deck is it's incredibly flimsy, and if you don't burst them down, you die.
Yeah, I like the thought on that, especially the quick draw holster. And I think Aura is a card that surprises me that it didn't get more play than it did, because I think she has those good sides. So it'd be fun to see her kind of find her place.
Yeah. What's interesting is that only 18. We might see her in a 4-dice 3-character deck. You could do like her, a battle droid, and a Jawa.
Would you ever do a Jawa over a battle droid?
No.
Yeah, I like how you could actually like do that deck and then play endless ranks, just battle droid back to battle droid the whole time.
I mean, it would be interesting because with her, 2 resource side, because you can discard for 1, and then logistics, maybe you can even play that support that makes more battle droids. By the way, that's the deck that I haven't cracked yet, but that's a deck I really think could be tier 1, is the make more battle droids deck.
If you didn't discard I feel like the discard of the vehicle itself hurts it, just because it's going to be such a slow deck and it's going to be hard to cycle that vehicle, because the only real good ways to do it are claiming. But I would love to see it work, because I'd love to see it where someone had like 5, 6, or 7 battle droids on the table. Yeah. I just want to see like Jedis killing battle droids as fast as you can make them.
You could play that thing a lot of times though, with cheat and then various battlefields that could bring it back. You could play it every turn. Like, I don't think that's going to be the issue. I think the issue is going to be, if you build a deck that can play it every turn, A, you have to draw it. And if you don't draw it, that alone may lose you the game. But B, your deck is going to be very, very slow, right? Like, it's going to be like the slowest deck ever.
Thronkar, before it got nerfed into Oblivion, would have been really, really fun with that, because that would have had plenty of money to make a battle droid.
I still think there's decks that have plenty of money. The problem is Thronkar was very versatile, and I think the deck we end up on will be less versatile.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, that'll be interesting. That is one of the fun cards. Like it's fun to have a card that lets you bring a new character into play,
Yeah.
even at a great expense. I think that's like one of the fun things. I also think we haven't really seen the other thing I'm really interested in. We haven't seen a lot of the plots. So we keep talking about these 30-point decks, but
Yeah.
there may be plot cards since we've only seen like maybe two at this point, maybe
I
one.
think three.
Or
Didn't we
is it
see
three?
another one that was like 2 cost, add 2 to your initial roll for the battlefield, which could be huge for some decks?
Yeah, which is yep. That's huge. Palpatine alone loves that because it can just make sure he gets his shields or
I
takes
think
away the battlefield.
most decks are going to take that approach, right?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, everyone takes the shields right now. Maybe there'll be a plot that will counter that eventually. But
Mm,
it is kind of a an interesting idea that we always talk about. We think of this number as 30. We get to 30,
yeah.
but we may start thinking about, well, how do we get to 28 because I
Yeah.
really want this plot, or how do we get to 27 because I really want this plot, and what sort of interesting initial game advantages. We've seen a little bit of that with like Lando getting an extra resources. What sort of stuff could you have to start a game that might let you kickstart a strategy that normally is unreliable due to having to roll something or find a card?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff could the plot let you start the game with? And I think that'll be really, really interesting to see.
Totally agree with that. Do you have any other decks for us?
Nope, that was it. I had
Okay.
two.
That sounds good. So let's gonna wrap up our legacies element then. So this is a live stream broadcast. If you have any questions, this is a great time to pop them into the chat over here. While that's happening, let's talk about what is your favorite card that has been spoiled recently. I'm trying to think of like what does that even mean anymore.
Yeah, there's been so many. Oh
Yeah.
man. Did you have one
I
off
have
the top of your head?
I know I have to go to SW Destiny and figure out what was even recent. I can't even remember anymore. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just mention one of the ones I spoiled the other day, trying to remember what they were. Do you remember what they were? I know one was the holster. Actually, before we do that, I want to comment on no cheating. I don't think I commented on this last week, but no cheating, I think, is a terrible card. Like, I don't think people are going to play no cheating. It looks amazing. Event, cost 0. Deal damage to opponent's character equal to the number of additional actions that opponent took during their last turn this round. I don't think that's a good card. I think that's normally going to be a card you have to discard, and then against a couple of decks, it'll do 3-4 damage, and it'll be great. But I don't think it's going to be a high enough impact. What I think it's going to be amazing for is a safety valve in the meta for if a deck like that does become awesome, it's around. And that's what I think is so awesome about the card, and I'm really excited about it from that perspective. But I really don't think people are going to play it all that often.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you're already seeing kind of, you don't see people chain that many actions together anymore, like two. So it's usually two, maybe three. Are you really going to play a card for when you run into that one deck that might cheat two or three, 2, 3 actions, and then you're going to happen to have this card in hand? It just feels so niche that like, I would be shocked if someone ever did it to me. I mean, even off of like a 4 speed, what are you going to get? You're going to get like 2 damage because they resolve 4 speed. I don't know. It doesn't feel like that will chase action cheating to me. It doesn't. Maybe in the Han Ray days of old, from Awakenings, where you could overwrite multiple times and you would actually deal like 5, 6, 7 damage to a deck like that. But to current decks, nah, they don't care.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I feel like it's, like I said, if a deck emerges, then awesome. Well, I'm going to be real shocked, like you said, when someone plays it against me and does the 2 damage to kill me. I'm going to be like, what? Are you kidding me? You're playing that?
Did you just do that?
I'm going to
Really?
be a little salty, I got to admit. Unless it's a game that doesn't matter, and then I'm going to be really impressed.
Let's see. So I'm looking through the spoilers. I'm trying to find. Man, it's always tough to find the ones that are the most recent. That's the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
There was that new battlefield that's kind of interesting. That's you take an indirect damage. It's Petronaki Arena, which is the Geonosis Attack of the Clones arena. But you take a indirect damage, and then to yourself, and you get to deal an unblockable damage.
Ooh.
So I think that's kind of like, again, we're talking about unblockable, but the
Yeah.
ability to assign a damage to your Jawa or battle droid that you don't care about, and then hit someone below their shields, could be pretty useful if you have a fast enough deck.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. All right, so this is a live stream every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to try to be recording this live now on Twitch Tiny Grimes. We do have one question in chat. Vayhinger asks, are you going to the San Diego Regionals? I think the answer is yes. The answer is I am certainly going to try, and I think it's going to end up being like rent a van and everyone from LA goes down kind of scenario, or maybe multiple cars hook up. But I think I'm going to be able to go. I am really excited to go. How about you? You going, James?
Yes. So, given how terrible the San Diego players are, we like it should be a cakewalk. Us LA guys need to go down there and just clean up.
Oh, I thought we were killing. Are we killing the rivalry or stoking the rivalry? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Anymore.
Wait. Did you decide to kill the rivalry? I was not informed.
I don't know. I don't know where we're at anymore. So we'll just say it. San Diego has no good players, and we're gonna wreck them. There. The rivalry has been rekindled. It's on. We threw down the gauntlet today.
Take that, Agent of Zion.
So we got. I believe this is Jem here. Asking a question. If you were going to try to defeat the R2P2 deck, what would you build? I think, James, your idea is a good one, to really try to be able to use No Mercy to burst them down. I think that is a really good plan.
Yeah, I think it's a deck that uses No Mercy, and I think it may be kind of the existing Kylo 2 Anakin deck. I think that has some potential to do it. Or you might look at I think another great card is obviously like Mind Probe off a Holocron can do. They're usually holding their cards, so if you can get out ahead of them and can threaten 5 damage, that's a big enough burst. So I wouldn't say Vader Raider exactly, but Vader Raider did do well at a regional recently. So maybe there's something back in that sort of idea of throwing big 3 damage dice. Unfortunately, they have that blowout removal on Vader of guard and of force misdirection, so you have to be a little careful there. I also think, like, hey, looking back at those unblockable weapons, so going back to things like the Awakenings lightsaber from the starter deck, maybe there's some of those weapons that are a little overlooked now, but that unblockable side might have more value than we once put on it. So how can we deal unblockable damage? I might also look at trying to go yellow villain with deadly, armed at the teeth, fight dirty to give me some big bursts, and maybe try the sniper rifle, things like that, would be where I'd be kind of thinking about trying to build something. I don't have the answer. If I did, I would win a regional somewhere. But that's kind of my thought process of, okay, how do we start attacking shields? I definitely will think you want blue. I think you want Intimidate. That's just that card so good. I think you want No Mercy. And then it's building around that. I think Vibro Knife makes a comeback. Maybe it's not blue. Maybe you do Grievous and you do Electrostaff. And you throw an Electrostaff on Grievous, and a Vibro Knife, he can be real scary real quick, while Kylo's dealing 2 damage a turn too. So that's I think
Unyielding is a really good call right now. Resolve any number of your blue dice showing damage in the order of your choice, treating this damage as unblockable. I actually didn't realize that said blue dice. I was thinking maybe in the 5 dice villain, so that's out. But maybe in that Kylo deck, Unyielding could be good. I don't know. That just seems like a promising card. They think they're totally fine, and so they're like, I'm gonna resolve the ancient lightsaber first, and then you're like, boom, Unyielding, you're dead. And they're like, oh, that one hurt. So
yeah, because
I don't know.
They've got that 3 shields and that like 3 health, and they're like, okay, I've got my ancient, I'll be okay. You're gonna hit me for 4, and instead it's 4 for the kill. Unyielding might be a tech card if you're seeing a lot of R2P2 these days.
Yeah, so Jem asked maybe Palpatine plus No Mercy. And yeah, I think that's interesting. Palpatine, No Mercy, Unyielding. Kylo 2, No Mercy, Unyielding. I think if you really want to beat R2-P2, I think those are some really reasonable possibilities.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's options out there. You just got to play with it. You got to test, and I haven't done the testing myself, but
Yeah.
those are the things I've thought about when I've, especially now having played RGP2 a lot in the last like 3 or 4 weeks and kind of gotten a feel for it. Someone who could sneak under or burst me suddenly in the first or second, in the second or third turn,
Yeah.
would surprise and scare me.
And just having that illusion out, right? And thinking like I'm safe. I'm just safe.
Yep.
There's nothing on the board that can kill me. I can make these plays, right? I'm making smart next level plays. Oh geez, they just killed me through my illusion. That
Yeah.
was bad.
Yeah, the illusion almost never feels threatened right now.
Yep.
And so you got to start players have to find a way to work around that, and then work around these regenerating shields.
Yep. So that is going to wrap up the Smugglers Den this week. Thank you all of you who showed up live to check it out. Thank you to all of you listening to it on YouTube and on whatever podcast you're using. And thanks so much to everyone on Patreon who has been supporting the show. Thank you so much. Very helpful. It's been amazing. And thank you, James, for coming on. Why don't you plug your stuff today one more time? Where can people find you?
Well, before I do that, I just want to say congratulations on 50 episodes.
geez.
It's amazing. The show is awesome, and it's been exciting seeing you kind of get back into it, uploading a bunch of content this last week. I've enjoyed watching and playing with you, and I'm looking forward to taking down the San Diego Regional with you in 2018 and the Legacies Medics. It's going to be great. If you're looking for me online, you can find me doing the Twitch Insomniac Games Twitch show on twitch.tv/Insomniac Games. It's all about video games and game developers on that show. We do it 3 times a week. We'll be back in January on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Not at the same time as the Smugglers Den, though, so don't worry about that. And otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at James Stevenson.
Yeah, real quick to 50. I don't know how I made 50. If you don't know me very well from the past, you know I've had a lot of podcasts, and I've never come close to 50. Because what happens is, and you've probably noticed this about me, I burn brightly. And I don't mean brightly as in intelligently. I mean I'm all in when I'm in. And so what happens is when you go all in that hard, you know, it can lead to burnout because it's really hard to make the perfect game. And I haven't found the perfect game. Destiny's amazing, though. I don't know. Maybe 50 episodes says maybe it is my perfect game. But I tend to burn out, especially from making content. It's a very time-consuming process. So to anyone else out there who is nearing 50, past 50, congratulations to you. Making content, not easy. Looks easy, I know. I know it looks easy. You turn on a camera and you yammer and say stupid things. I know it looks easy.
Wear a hat.
It's harder than that. But so congrats to everyone out there in the Destiny community who is making content on a regular basis. You're all awesome. You're all helping. And we'll see you next time on the Smugglers Den.